Hello and welcome to another episode of Chuchu is a Ranker, and on this episode we are going to be discussing the discography of the Canadian singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist and producer Grimes. Hailing from Vancouver, Grimes is very much a self-made artist. She came up via MySpace, creating her first two albums in her bedroom and slowly gained an underground following. By the time her third album Visions was released, Grimes had been signed to a label and had broken out of the underground by way of some killer art direction and some very savvy use of the YouTube platform. Since then, Grimes has gone on to release 5 studio albums, marry and divorce the world's richest man, the world's richest douchebag, and caught various kinds of controversy via some ill-advised verbal diarrhea in the media. And as for my own fandom, basically there is none. Coming into this I had only heard one single Grimes LP, but to its credit, I really did like it. Enough in fact to finally find out what else Grimes has in her discography. Was that one record just a fluke, or does Grimes truly have legs? Let's find out together. So, without further ado, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. These are the studio albums of Grimes ranked from worst to best. So, we're going to be kicking off this list with Misanthropocene from 2020, which was Grimes' 5th LP and most recent to date. And this LP represents something of a victory lap for Grimes. All of her records up to this point had a feeling of perpetual motion, of the artist wanting to move up the musical ladder, always looking for ways to change up and improve her output. But finally, on Misanthropocene, Grimes takes a moment to stop and look back lovingly at what she has already done, rather than looking forward towards the future. As such, this album plants itself somewhere between the poppy hookiness of Archangels and the more ambient-orientated Visions. But there are some new elements creeping in here too, most notably more rock and industrial aspects, and this gives the record a more, pun intended, grimy feel. There's a kind of murky gloom swirling around this LP, flowing into every nook and cranny. That's not to say that the sound quality suffers though. In point of fact, Misanthropocene is actually the best sounding Grimes record. Its production is rich and full, with lots of atmospheric subtlety woven into its seams. And the consistency of the songwriting is also on point, with most of the tracks landing very well indeed. Only the throwaway pop fluff of You'll Miss Me When I'm Not Around and the slightly unmemorable ambient tune Violence slip off the rails. But even then, those tracks are just ignorably pleasant rather than outright clunkers. Otherwise, we're on very solid ground here. Opener, So Heavy I Fell Through the Earth, gets the record off to a great start with a pungent atmosphere, dreamy textures and a billowing romanticism. Delete Forever is one of Grimes' most rock-orientated tunes, with its acoustic guitars and splashes of banjo framing a decent lyric about being addicted to depression. Always down when I'm not up. Guess it's just my rotten luck to fill my free time with permanent blue. New Gods is a piano-kissed atmospheric piece with a desperately sad vibe crackling through it. My Name is Dark has some cool post-punk guitar touches and a gnarly bass that revs the track up. It's a pretty badass tune, especially due to the angry bleak lyrics that see Grimes glower. The angel of death said to God, "Unfuck the world, you stupid girl." While Our Daughter is a wonderful closer, its big-hearted naive catchiness and delightfully lightweight soundscape ending the record with a nice poppy flourish. So yeah, as you can probably tell from this review, we're already in a pretty good place here. Misanthropocene comes in last due to liking the other Grimes records even more, rather than any specific fault with this one. I think it's a pretty darn good LP of darkly atmospheric pop. 4 stars. Next up we have Getty Primes from 2010, which was Grimes' debut LP. And as I alluded to in the intro, this album was recorded as independently as you can get, in Grimes' bedroom by herself with a PC, some instruments and some recording software. And at times it sounds exactly like that. This certainly isn't the slickest sounding album you'll ever hear. But it's actually that ramshackle DIY element that gives this record its power. There's a real innocent sweetness to this LP that gives it an inexhaustible supply of charm. It almost makes you want to run up and give Grimes a big hug, if it didn't lead to you being banged away for sexual assault, which it almost certainly would, or beaten to death by her roadies, or perhaps even shanked by Grimes herself. I mean, she does look like the kind of girl that might have a knife sequestered somewhere about her person. Anyway, what we have here is a delightfully lo-fi pop record that is apparently a concept album based on Frank Herbert's Dune, and the David Lynch movie adaptation of the same name. I say apparently because, beyond the song titles, I can't really find much in the way of lyrical connection. But if Grimes says that that's what it is, then who am I to argue? Stylistically, this is actually a bit more direct and hooky than the next few releases, having at least one foot rooted in indie rock. Its fragile, twee and distinctly sad compositions feeling about one phone call away from appearing in a Wes Anderson movie. And as for consistency, despite the record's amateurish nature, these tracks are all pretty good. Highlights include Zoll Face Dancer, which has a lovely wispiness to its incredibly catchy yet melancholic lightweight pop. Although when Grimes sings, "Everybody thinks that I'm boring," it kind of stretches credulity. Grimes is a lot of things, but boring isn't one of them. Weird, controversial, and a little freaky, yeah. Boring, no. Rosa has a nice direct indie pop shimmy. Its simple but effective guitar riff lingering long in the memory. Fade Rather Darkheart has a crackling nighttime groove to it, as over skittering beats Grimes promises, "I won't break your heart in the dark." Hey, you can break anything you want of mine in the dark, love. Unless it's my dick, that's just not going to work for me. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to roll that one back. Gambang uses a wobbly guitar sample to put a cracked sadness out of the ether, as Grimes' lovely vocal melodies tug on the heartstrings. While closer, Beast Infection is wonderful with its lilting sadness and spectral vocals that bring forth comparisons to Kate Bush from the darkness. So yeah, Getty Primes is a short, sharp 31-minute blast of extremely charming indie pop and a pertinent reminder of what artistic kids can achieve in their bedrooms with some creativity and a dash of hope. I mean, Christ, all I managed to achieve in my bedroom as a teenager was fouling up my granddad's Razzle Mags. It's actually pretty inspiring stuff. Not my granddad's Razzle Mags, although actually they were pretty inspiring. Anyway, this album is great and yeah, inspiring stuff. 4 stars. Next up we have Howfaxer, also from 2010, which was Grimes' second LP. And this album also comes from deep in the bedroom demo days. But although this record is still a little rough around the edges, it is noticeably slicker and has more atmospheric nuance than Getty Primes. And on this, Grimes is at her most set adrift and formless, floating through dark-hued ambient soundscapes that often have no discernible structure and lyrics that are, for the most part, unintelligible. That might sound unappealing, but the atmospheric mood and gothic electrosonic vistas she's managed to create here are impressively immersive and spellbinding. This is one of those albums where you just want to sit back, close your eyes and float off into the starry skies, letting the chill vibes and occasionally booming dance beats send you off on a celestial journey. Grimes herself calls this her medieval album, as it was inspired by ye old monasteries and choral church music and such like. Personally, I don't really feel that when I listen to this. I guess all music is ultimately a personal thing when you listen to it, and as I said, this for me is starry skies or maybe being stuck in the belly of some huge robotic complex or whatever. But the choral thing makes sense, as her layered vocals are a huge part of what makes this LP work so well. And because of that, more than any other Grimes record, this really does draw comparisons to Kate Bush. But in a very good way, as just like Kate, Grimes' vocal work is absolutely sublime here, her ethereal howls and tumbling gymnastics really making the tunes come to life. Highlights on an excellent electronica and ambient focused LP includes Weregild, which introduces the record's darker vibe nicely. Its gothic glides supported by some cool percussion that sounds like constantly locking and loading rifles. Devon is a distant electropop banger, with Grimes wrapping you around her finger via a wash of maudlin breakup lyrics and sweet nymphish vocals. Dream Fortress is absolutely rad, its lullingly sad soundscape dragged kicking and screaming into total badassery by the pulsing sub-bass and horror-tinged string stabs that occupy its best moments. Mwah! Chef's kiss, that track absolutely rules. My Sister Says the Saddest Things is another fantastic tune. It has a great rhythmic thrum to it and a vocal that gathers up emotion like a magnet in a paperclip factory. while Hallways is pretty cool with its swirling darkness and sudden bursts of digital keys that really remind me of the sterling Axiom Verge soundscape by Thomas Happ. So, lots of great stuff on this LP, but if I did have one minor criticism, it would be that at 50 minutes it's a touch too long. And there are some ignorable beat forward cuts on the back end, such as Swan Song and that track denoted by horseshoe symbols or whatever, that could have been trimmed to achieve that shorter runtime. But yeah, those are just nitpicks in the face of a really good album of beautifully atmospheric work. I mean, Dream Fortress is probably worth the price of admission alone. 4 stars. Next up we have Visions from 2012, which was Grimes' third LP and first for a proper label. And this album represents her breakout into the mainstream. But more than that, as the LP made a pretty big impact upon landing, gaining many Album of the Year nominations from professional outlets and sending thousands of young girls running to their local second-hand shop in order to buy a keyboard and a microphone. Indeed, within the arena of independent ambient dream pop, Visions by Grimes was kind of a ground zero, highly influential record. And here we find Grimes stripping away a lot of the layered atmospheric touches from her previous release Halifaxa, and instead concentrating on the bare bones of her electronica-forward compositions. In theory, that should make this album a lot more straightforward and less immersive than her last one, but there's something magical going on here that's kind of hard to put your finger on. There's a really addictive quality to this LP that's kind of hard to explain. I just keep wanting to spin it again and again. The darkness that has always been there in Grimes' work is still in full effect here. I mean, when I listen to this album, I can't help but picture storm clouds and lightning in the dead of night. Despite the more direct pop hooks that are delivered via the record's new sense of clarity, it still harbours that familiar feeling of collapsing sadness. And somehow, against all odds, the stark production of this LP actually managed to elevate that feeling, to pluck it out of the background and send it right out front. As such, this album succeeds in conjuring up a fantastic overall vibe. It's sad and dark, it's spaciously atmospheric and incredibly cohesive. Maybe more cohesive as a total package than any other Grimes record. Yet at the same time, its simple melodies and clarity allow it to be more direct and more radio friendly than her previous work. It's a really cool juxtaposition of opposing elements that come together just right to yield spectacular results. Highlights from an album that is all about the overall rather than the individual pieces includes Genesis, which sees Phil Collins taking over and leading the band down a much cheesier synth-pop direction than before. Nope, that's something else completely. Instead, this Grimes track combines billowing vocals with some nice Asian-sounding keys that couldn't sound more within Grimes' wheelhouse than if you had it drive a Tesla and made it say questionable things about white pride in the mainstream media. Oblivion is arguably Grimes' best song with its cool creaking synths, gradual build-up and unforgettably catchy vocal lines. Just don't mention Skyrim or it will undoubtedly get penis envy. Mwah, chef's kiss for penis envy. I mean Oblivion. That tune is an absolute banger all the way from Tokyo to Cyrodiil. Colour of Midnight impresses with its hypnotically repetitive vocals and well-worked minimalism. Symphonia 9 is fantastic with its languorous atmosphere and sweetly romantic midnight balladry, even as it delves into nightmarish waters towards the close. Night Music ropes in some proper four-to-the-floor dance beats and some glacial synths for a late album banger, while Skin dovetails into a miserable yet catchy refrain that's heightened by the atmospheric instrumental wash that surrounds it. But yeah, the truth is that pretty much all the tracks earn their place on this LP, from the Robot Overlord sanctioned beats of 8 and Circumambient, to the ear-catching synth stabs on Be a Body, to the short, sharp closing balladry of Know the Way. It's all brilliant and engaging stuff. 4.5 stars. So here we are at the top of the mountain, and the Grimes Gold Medal is going to go to Art Angels from 2015, which was her fourth LP. And what we have here is a straight up mainstream pop album that is absolutely rammed with incredibly catchy, radio ready hits, yet at the same time still maintains that oddball, idiosyncratic element that makes Grimes' music stand out from the rank and file pop masses. The LP is also notable for garnering a huge amount of critical acclaim, ending up on many an end of year list, including being chosen as NME's Album of the Year and coming in second on Rolling Stone's list. And I'm right there with them, as Archangels also ended up as my Album of the Year pick when I made the Chuchu is a Ranker 2015 Album of the Year episode. The record is just so immediate and gratifying, spinning off great hooks and ridiculously catchy choruses like it was a 2-for-1 sale and a going out of business clear out. As such, covering the high spots is an arduous task, as that would be pretty much everything. This LP slaps hard from start to finish. Still though, my cherry picks from a flawless pop rollercoaster would include California, which is Grimes' most straight-laced moment of diva princess pop. Its bouncing, country-inflected mainstream melodies and off-the-scale catchiness showing off the album's level of accessibility. Scream, on the other hand, is typically off-the-walls bonkers Grimes with its literal screams and sultry Chinese rapping. Kill V Maim is an absolute banger. Its strident beats, off-kilter weirdness and urgent chorus coming together to make a truly unforgettable slice of nutsoid otaku pop. Easily turns the catchiness up to 11 again with its earworm chorus that will wiggle into your cerebral cortex, take control of your motor functions, and inexplicably start flipping off random coppers without your permission. Reality feels like the missing link between Visions and Archangels, its pulsing, dark-hued electronic balladry hitting that textbook Grimes sweet spot. While World Princess Part 2 has an insanely catchy synth riff and an awesome trip-hoppy thrum that makes the track utterly irresistible. So thanks, Grimes. You actually made me love a song called World Princess. I mean, how the hell am I supposed to look myself in the mirror as a butch-ass alpha now? But yeah, I'm just scratching the surface there. Every track on this gives you the goods. From the fluttering indie rock of Flesh Without Blood, to the wonderfully cascading synth lines of Pin, to the booming beats and fiery R&B rapping of Venus Fly, the album simply does not put a foot wrong. It is amazing, and it's my pick for Grimes' best record and also one of the very best pop albums of the last decade. 5 stars. So, now my deep dive is finished, the question remains, did I gain more appreciation for the artist? And the answer is, fairly obviously, yes, very much indeed. I had an absolute blast in the company of Grimes this week. A quick shout out to her bevy of non-album singles such as Player of Games and I Wanna Be Software Too. They're all great fun. So much so that Grimes has now shot up to the position of being one of my favourite female pop stars, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what she'll do next. And that's my list, but of course that won't be your list, so why not sound off in the comments and tell me how you'd rank these records? Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and all that other kind of YouTube jazz. Feel free to check out the Grimes Spotify playlist that I personally curated, link in the description below. Make sure to take care of yourself, but most importantly, just keep on ranking.